Welcome to Backstage with Becca with special guest Nick Bredosky. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca. On this episode, this Mississippi native, who's now based in LA, has been seen in productions of Tick Tick Boom, I Love You Because, 10 Things I Hate About You Unauthorized at Rockwell, and recently starred in a gender swap production of Barbara's Wedding. Please welcome Nick Bredosky. How are you? It's great to have you on this.
Oh, thank you. I'm good. I'm wrapping up the end of the year. I feel like I've got a couple of great little last minute things coming in and yeah, little not any theater stuff, but other jobs that I do to keep afloat. And I'm kind of pleased to be able to just be spending time on those few things and myself and sort of bringing the year to a close with gratitude, hoping for a couple cool things next year that are already kind of starting to percolate.
Yes. Well, me too. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed that the year ends well and that next year goes like that all the dreams come true next year.
yeah, thrive in 2025.
Yes. Oh wait, that's good.
Oh, that's not mine. That's not
Has that
mine.
been a
But
thing?
yes, yeah, I think it is starting for sure. I heard it from my friend Leo. So
I hope that happens
me
for
too.
everyone,
Me too.
like
I think
collectively.
I really hope it's that and not survive 2025. But
Oh God. No, thrive, thrive,
thrive,
thrive.
thrive. We're gonna
It has
speak
to
it.
be.
Thrive.
It has
Yes.
to be. So, since this is a theater podcast,
Yes.
no, have you always known that you wanted to be an actor and like be part of like the theater community, acting community?
From a very early age, I think it when I was younger, I think I kind of thought I might just want to do the producing, writing, directing side when I was very, very little. But I think one of the first times I saw a play or a musical was around, 5, 6, 7, something in there, and got bit really hard of like, oh, you
Yeah,
could just do this. We could do this. And I could do it right now in the room with everybody, and people would want to be a part of that. That's really different and neat. And I didn't know you could do that. And so, that kind of immediate change. But then I didn't get to do theater for a long time. Um, so yeah, so I love theater.
wait, I'm curious, how did you know when you were little about like the producing aspect and the directing aspect and all of that?
I was a very inquisitive child and loved movies and television from an early age. And so around 5, I was picking up that I'm not sure I really understood it. I just understood that like those were the jobs that meant you created the thing that you were imagining, I think is kind of what I had picked up on.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that was something I heard and realized they were interconnected things and was like, I'm going to do that. Because I was definitely kind of a precocious child. So I think maybe I didn't quite fully understand what that meant, but I understood that it meant you got to do it and you got to be a part of it and you got to make the imaginative thing real on a level. And I loved that. So
Yeah.
that was what hooked me. And then one of the first movies that I can remember like falling in love with was Barefoot in the Park. And when I found out that that was a play originally, it kind of just like interlocked
Like,
everything.
yes. Yeah, because like seeing stuff live on stage and like seeing stuff change from night to night and knowing that it can change from night to night a little bit is is kind of crazy. When
Well, and it teaches you so much about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna finish with like when you're a film fan.
Yes, because I think film really tricks people. I can tell from where I come from and from the experience I have even out here amongst people who don't do the film industry, people are very unaware of what it looks like and feels like to film something. And while there are really great moments that occur clip to clip in film, the creation of theater, of propelling characters and stories through that much time in physical space with people, uh-uh, that's
Yeah,
unmatched.
there's nothing like it. Well, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, even when like this small little movie, that Wicked movie, that's I mean, no one knows about, I don't think, came out.
Yeah, the cult classic.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that people are just discovering. I'm like, they should have like filmed different takes and edited
And
together.
then like and then
For-
like giving you like, and would you like to see Wicked version 2 this evening? Would you like to see the matinee performance of
Right. I was like, that would be so fun to have like not for like the actors, but to have
not
them
for
like
the
different
muggles?
versions of like the riffs and stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe someone will take that idea and do that for the next movie musical. I don't know.
I could see the streaming release, whoever ends up, well, I guess it would it be Universal? So I guess it would be Peacock would own
Yeah, yeah,
this, would
yeah.
eventually. So okay, well maybe Peacock will do that where like it'll pause certain moments and be like, would you like to continue with the no? I mean that would be really fun. I feel like we have versions of interactive viewing like that. I'd be into it.
They should have done that with like Les Mis too. Like
Yeah, that would have been just for us to figure out which clip we liked most and get rid of the other ones, I think. But
I don't know if that would have worked for everyone, but with like Samantha Barks and stuff. I don't know.
sure.
That would have been cool. I feel like speaking of like the theater you've participated in
Mm.
LA, I feel like someone who would be really good at making that happen would be Graham.
Oh, Graham can do whatever he puts his mind to. Graham is a fount of many different possibilities. You just got to hook him on the right idea. I'm still waiting to see ladders. That's my deep cut for Graham is I'd still like to see ladders, but
Get him in there to help produce a movie musical and he'll be like, "How
something.
about this?"
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we had an option where there are, three different. I mean, that's kind of like Clue, the movie Clue. I loved the lore of that there were multiple ways you could view the ending and that you'd come back a different night and the ending would be different. Like that's fantastic.
No, that's awesome, and it keeps you entertained.
Yeah, it means you could bring back a friend and literally have a different experience. I don't know.
Theater
That's
aspect.
correct, exactly.
Yeah. I need that because 'cause I'm so ADHD that I'm like, "Wait, I'm seeing the same thing, and I
Hmm.
want the theater experience." The
That's
crowd
a cool idea. Like kind of broadly, I wonder if if you're kind of ahead of the game in the sense there. You mean you might be, Becca, you might be. That might be
hey,
something in 10 years we're like very commonplace,
all
you
the
know.
editors are cringing right now.
everybody's everybody's puckering for sure. Everybody's like,
They're
"Mm,
they're like, "Please, no."
no, no, more options, no."
No. Just give us one project. So, I wanna know what's the first theater show you saw?
I uh, I mean, the first professional theater show I probably saw would have been like Phantom of the Opera, which is a great one
Yeah.
to be one of the first. The first thing I remember seeing is probably something in the classics range of like Sound of Music. I think is probably one of the like first actual live shows I think I remember seeing.
Well,
Um,
that's so good to see, like, when you're young, I feel like, because then you're like, "Oh, kids can do this too."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it made me very immediately aware of the stakes of like, oh, I could be doing this. I don't think I grew up in an area that was very conducive to that or at that time, but yeah, I definitely it definitely gave me the reality to reach for.
Yes. How did you eventually, like, reach that and, reach the theater community?
Honestly, my saving grace was my high school theater teacher. She saw me and believed in me and gave me my first set of opportunities and really let me soar, kind of big fish in little pond. But I had been caught in a trap of looking too old or being a little too mature to play the age range I was, but not being maybe mature enough or old enough looking to play the next level up. And so I just kept, it felt like I didn't have that awareness at the time. It felt like I just couldn't get cast. Um, and so I was, because there weren't a lot of, there were like cute little kid or like the 17-year-old heartthrob, and I was just like stuck from age like 9 to 15 in this like nexus of why can't I get any of these parts that I can sing well, and like I feel like I'm doing a good job in the audition. And so she really probably gave me a couple of roles that didn't fit, but she just wanted me to get to do it, and that bit the bug hard enough that I wouldn't give up on it. And so I got a lot more opportunities from that point on.
Ooh, what was like the first production that she was like, "Hey, I'm gonna put you in this."
So I played like the oldest character in a group of, I was 14 and played the oldest person on stage in a very, heartfelt and good production of Diary of Anne Frank.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Oh,
like
uh, oh wait, that's very interesting.
that's a very left field pick for sure.
Ooh,
So and then I followed quickly with being JoJo in Seussical. So it was just a couple of opportunities in a row that weren't really for Nick, but they were for Nick, you
they
know?
they were like, "Okay, this is something."
Yeah. After that, things start making more sense. But for the first couple, I think I really survived and thrived off of the love of this woman that was my high school theater teacher all of my high school experience, who gave me a part that probably shouldn't have been mine in order to give me a part.
I'm just like stuck on I feel like nowadays people high school students wouldn't like the Diary of Anne Frank would be too mature of a production to put on at a high school. I don't know.
I agree with that completely, unfortunately. And I think that is due to our attention span and what we like to ingest in terms of media and culture, and the lack of reading that can go into today's lifestyle, which I understand. I'm not judging. I get why that would be the case. But um, I was really pleased, and looking back on it, I see her effort so fantastically. I grew up in Mississippi, and so
Yeah.
my theater teacher was doing something
Yes.
for people in not only our little theater community but for the community, because we had popular-ish shows. Like we had a good attendance and uh good turnouts, and it was a neat thing. And so to see that people even in that area longed for, even in the early 2000s, longed for shows like Diary of Anne Frank and Boys Next Door, um, and some things that like maybe we weren't necessarily always equipped to tackle, but at least we were bringing reverence to that story and trying to bring it with truth to an area that isn't apt to look at those stories.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate her guidance this late in life, of kind of being like, wow, what a cool experience. Like as I worked with people of different, races and sexual orientations, which again at that time in that area was not as comfortable or easy or looked upon correctly. And so she really was doing something powerful to be able to kind of at least make sure that her contribution was progressive, and cleverly so, I think.
We need more theater teachers like that in the world now because
She was a maverick.
like I completely I'm the TikTok generation, they have too short of an attention span to pay attention to most things, but I feel like if you're in like a theater program and the theater instructor is like, "Hey, we're doing this play." and we're gonna research and learn together about like this time period. Like that's so important to tell stories.
I mean, as a 14-year-old man who was Jewish but had no real connection to that culture, it was an education.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's neat because, like, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I would have gotten that in that area at that time without that.
Yeah. See, I was very lucky. I'm half Jewish, so I was very
Mhm.
lucky growing up. My grandparents told me a bunch of stories and were like very like did not uh did not like lessen the stories to be
Didn't hold
kid
back.
appropriate. Didn't hold back
Yeah.
at all on the stories to be kid appropriate. So
I
I
think that's important, you
yeah,
know?
I heard everything.
Because kids see everything. We know everything that's going on, even if we're not quite smart enough to understand the
Yeah.
complexity of it. And what we don't understand, we plug in. We just plug in a meaning. So, you know, I,
Yes.
that was my experience. That was my beginning of theater.
Oh, I love that. I love that instructor. So I'm curious, why LA versus New York?
So as I got older, I think my tastes refined where I felt like I wasn't going to get to play the characters that I felt like I was going to get caught in the same crux again, where I was too young to play the characters I was right for and too old to play the characters I was age appropriate for. And um and was kind of starting to see that in the roles that I was getting offered or getting or being hired for, that maybe my best bet, because I did love movies and TV, would be to go for that and hope that along the way somebody would go, "Oh, this guy who can act can sing and can move. Let's call him for this and that." And so I'm still waiting on that. I mean, I do theater, but like I'm waiting on like the call, I guess,
Production.
which is terrible. That's not how this industry works at all. So and that's why I think a couple of us are trying to do like some of these plays that we're starting to put on, and
Yes.
learning from friend groups and trying to join that fray, because I think that's really the only way you further your career is doing participating in things for yourself and creating things for yourself and having people notice you doing what you love doing.
Yes, and I feel like that's so important right now because it's so tough and competitive
Yeah.
in every industry. But I feel
Yes.
like especially out here, also I would assume in New York right now, but I feel like that's so important for like up for like people who are about to graduate high school and people who are about to graduate college to hear is that you're not the only one having a tough time. Like,
No, and if you really start listening, pardon me to interrupt you, if you really start listening to like people we want to be, or people I want to emulate their business or their lifestyle, their achievements in the arts, they're all having to make their own things because they're not getting the phone calls they want, and or they're getting phone calls that don't make sense to them anymore, or don't feel right for them anymore, don't feel like people are seeing them. So it is, on every level you're going to have to do it for yourself. And I was better at that when I I'm getting back into that, but I was better at that when I didn't live in one of the major hubs, because I felt the need for it. Then I moved to one of the major hubs, and you get kind of scared, or I got kind of scared and kind of complacent of, well, like now somebody has to give me the opportunity for me to continue to do this. And I think it's important to note that hubs like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, they're just bigger places.
yes.
All the same stuff is going on. So if you could create in your hometown, if you were able to produce on a small level in your hometown, you're able to do that in the major city you live in too. Just make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people.
Absolutely, and I maybe I'm different, but I feel like when, like, you first move out here too, it's like, "Oh, well, I can do that when I first move out here," and then it gets a little more uncomfortable too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, because you start to get lessons from people who have been out here, who are trying to figure it out. Because it takes a while. I mean, I've been here for 12 years now, and really only by about like year 7 or 8 did I start to feel like not only did I understand more about how the town, the industry, whatever works, um, and then and at the same turn that the town started looking at me going, "Oh, so you're gonna stay. You're gonna stay and you're gonna do stuff and you're gonna work. Okay. Okay, well maybe so." It's unfortunately, I think you kind of have to
Create.
think about it the same way you would think about any other big undertaking of a career choice that like you're gonna hustle.
Yep, yep. And so I'm curious, I've seen you in a lot of productions out here. How did you find theater companies and theater communities in the Los Angeles area? What was like that first step?
So another Becca is the person to thank for this, Miss Becca or Rebecca Kenigsberg.
Yes.
She is my guiding light. Rebecca Kenigsberg is one of my first friends in Los Angeles.
Oh,
We met on both of our first days at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, which is an acting institution here for people trying to get more work in film and television. I think it's a great place to train. I see a lot of people stay at in class structures, and I think there's a lot of benefit to that. I don't like to stay in class structures for much longer than a year, personally. So I think I was there for about a year and a half because I started working for the company as well in part. But Becca and I met there, and our friendship transcended that institution to out in the real world. And although, due to my own shortcomings, we took a little friendship break for a while, I was lucky enough that when a moment arose for her to be trying to mount personal projects through the work we had done together at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, she thought of me and reached out to me. And it not only rekindled our friendship in a really positive and deep way, but also was the beginning and only reason that I for sure am doing theater out here in Los Angeles.
hey,
Yeah.
shout wait, and no, what was that first project?
That was at the Hudson Theater. Graham Wetterhahn and Becca collaborated on a Tick Tick and Elmo's app
Okay.
on Tick Tick Boom.
Okay, awesome. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
So, and
which is
that's
probably the first time you ever saw me perform, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, and I it was the first time I had ever seen a production of that too. So
I
like,
get that. I get that. It was the first time I'd ever heard of it. We were originally supposed to do just Harrison and Melanie, Harrison Melanie, who is a wonderful friend and absolutely talented performer, as you know. He and I were supposed to, Becca Graham Elmo were going to do Last 5 Years. And we
oh,
were going to do it, two men, he and I, and that got the rights for that got kind of stolen out from under Becca in a really fantastic story. But so it led us into doing Tick Tick Boom, which also led them into adding Shelley Regner, which is where she
yeah.
and I met. So yeah,
Aw.
yeah,
It's like fate played a part
yeah,
in that
yeah,
completely.
yeah, a
Oh
little bit
my
of wild,
gosh.
wild faith there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a really good production, which I
You
feel like
know, please go
yeah.
ahead. No, please go ahead.
No, which I feel like led to you kind of like getting involved with the whole little like LA Rockwell theater community, which is really
Honestly, I got really, really lucky. I got lucky that it was such a connection of multiple people who were already involved, in differing, varying levels with the LA theater communities, that their contacts out of love and appreciation and,
yeah.
the cohabitation of trying to do LA theater were involved in seeing that production. And it was absolutely, if nothing else, all of our hearts were big time in it, and we were definitely trying our best. To this day, I am sad that they did not know and we did not know, and I don't think any of us could have afforded to do more of it right then. I think if we had had the time to do a few more weeks, it would have been a really impactful piece because it was Becca directed the crud out of it, and Graham, was unendingly giving with and constructive with the way that he built the process and the production. And as you know, Elmo Zapp is
Oh,
a nasty man on a on a
so good.
musical direction.
So good.
So, it really, we built a lot of trust and a lot of love and put a lot of heart into it. And that's where I met so many of my current, circle of
Oh,
people
yeah.
doing that show. And then we went right on to do another show right after that, a couple of months later, and I Love You Because, with the
Yes.
same kind of company and
With
grouping and
Allie.
collaborators. And yeah, with Allie Foch. And
Yeah.
gosh, she's so talented.
Oh my
Looks
gosh.
has not aged a singular day since then, because she does all of her like health and wellness stuff, and I'm like,
God, it's true.
how
Like,
she? Ha, I've known you for like 9 years. How do you not look different? So, she and Lana McKissick more or
oh
killing
my
babies or
gosh.
something. I don't know what they're doing. It's good on them. Good on them. But
Yes. No, it's so true, honestly. And you got a stamp of approval from like people who knew John, Jonathan Larson personally in that
oh,
show. I
thank
don't
you for
know
saying
what you're
that. That
talking
was a
about,
that was a very I was
but
very honored with that. Thank you.
yeah, so I know like one of your biggest fans who we both
Yeah.
know is I'll name drop Brian.
Yeah.
Like loved that production, and I think every time I was there, he was there. So
Yeah, he did us a lot of favors with that, and he fell in love with it, and it was impactful for me, and I think a little, from what he communicated, just a little healing for him, because they all lost him. So it was such a loss. It was
yeah.
such a huge loss. Theater losses are so big, because it is family and it is love, and even with all the drama and all the difficulty that comes with it, there is an appreciation and a kinship that develops.
And listen, I loved the movie, but this production, like I'm a huge Andrew Garfield fan always.
He was phenomenal.
But
Yes.
this production, you did like I wish it could be brought back. I wish there was like footage that could be posted somewhere
Mm,
online
mm.
because I feel like people really need to see the outstanding performances that happened during this particular
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think on it fondly because I was 25, and it's about a man turning 30. And while I think I did a good job, it is funny to me sometimes where I'm like, oh wow, now I could really give you something. Like
Right.
having crested over 30, it's like, oh, now I really, oh, I get more, oh man. It's kind of I think that's
Yes.
one of the most beautiful parts of theater too, is there, in a way that I don't think you get to do as often in film, you can touch parts of yourself that either are long gone or haven't gotten there yet, and you can touch them with accuracy, through the experience and the play and the imagination of acting, and then you get to that place in life and go, oh,
Like,
and, you just kind of get a
wait,
deeper understanding.
wait, I could have done this.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you have changed? Like
Oh, I'll tell you
now?
what. I'll tell you. I think the biggest thing that I know I would have changed is there were moments in the discussion of the aging, or of the changing of dreams, or of the shifting of priorities, that I understood on an intellectual level and had some experience to back up, to understand how to weave and how to feel inside of those moments. But I think I did not realize all of the subtlety that I could have brought to giving you that experience. I think at the time, because I was 25, there were moments where I know myself, even if the audience bought or enjoyed the moment, that I was pushing a little bit in order to make sure you were with
Like
me on that part of the experience that I was a little insecure because I had not actually had. Um, but and so now I think I would understand the amount of, in theater, we get this beautiful thing where the audience wants you to convey your truth, whatever it is, as ugly or messy or overly simplistic or nonchalant, or if you're lying to yourself or whatever it is, they want to see it. And I know now there are moments where I would have let someone see it rather than made someone see it.
Okay. See, I feel like that's what makes you a good performer is like
Oh, thank
the
you.
thought process like that because I mean, I can go on. But what was your favorite song in Tick Tick Boom to sing?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. um, there's a song. To be honest, I'm not great at names of songs, period. Um, is it it's
Where is
the
it show?
thank you. It's about midway through, and it's the song that's very much the three of them. Is it like somebody tries? I can't remember the um
Wait. The three of them in the Johnny Can't Decide one?
yes, thank you so much. Yes, Johnny Can't
Yes.
Decide. I think that one felt like it was because there's so many moments in the show that we are either singularly the focus
Yes.
or two of us are conveying a particular idea. I think this was the moment for me in the show where it felt like I got to experience a very even distribution of the magic of being on stage with people where when it's just three of you, it's just two of you, just a couple of you, you can really hone into the ethereal, like let me get woo for a minute. You can hone into the energy that reverberates between the few of you because we are connected mentally and phonically audio like from an audio perspective, we are all connected. We're creating sound together and moving in a particular idea. And there were moments within that where I know we touched a poignancy where our ideas and our sound mixed together would could make you cry
Yes.
because we're touching a feeling through our presentation and our sound. And that to me is where theater surpasses film because film needs so many things in order to get that moment right. And they have so much control over it. And in theater, you are left to the rawness of what you are able to bring in that moment. And when it is matched and reciprocated, it creates this feeling that I think we all crave. And when we experience it together, whether we realize it or not, I think it creates more room for us to realize that we are all similar.
Yes, and I was gonna mention before you got into the sound part, I was like, did Becca and Graham know that like y'all's voices were gonna match up and work so perfectly together?
I don't know that. I know that we had a lot of trust put on us because we had a lot of people who had already worked with people. Like Becca had already worked with me. Graham was coming into it from I think a little bit like that was kind of
Yeah.
his one of his big jumping points. So I'm not sure he knew Becca and I believe knew Elmo, but I'm not sure if he knew any of us. Becca and Harrison were always close, and Harrison and Elmo had already worked together as well as Shelley and Elmo.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of cross pollination of who already trusted who that then trusted one another.
Yeah.
So we went into it where I think I knew they got me and Harrison together for kind of a Kim test sound read when it was just going to be us for the last 5 years. So I think when we changed the show, it became a let's trust, let's jump. This was the other show we were passionate about, and maybe is actually the show we should just do anyway. And somebody said Shelly, and people liked Shelly. And so I think she was just brought on And that, Becca called me and was like, I'm offering you this part, but I understand that's not what you originally signed up for. So do you even want to do that? And I like took a
Yes,
minute to think about it. I like because I'd never heard of the show. So like I like went and looked up the show and like started reading parts of the show. And I was like, oh, yeah,
you're like,
yeah, yeah, of course I'll do this, but I didn't know at first. And so I was like, I'll consider it. I
yeah,
was trying to
let
be
me know.
professional, whatever. I don't know.
It's so weird that like Rent is like such some huge phenomenon, and then Tick Tick Boom about the like literal genius behind Rent is a smaller, lesser known show.
The forgotten, stepchild of Jonathan Larson. I don't know. I think it's a little raw.
Yeah,
I think it's a little deep. I don't know. I don't know if back then we liked doing that as much. I think now most of our audiences or most of our paying audiences are like, cut me, let's get deep.
yeah,
Let's go. I want to feel, and so I think now maybe it's something where we all need to do a few more tick tick booms. And
yes.
because I would have thought
No,
it felt weird. It felt like everybody realized Andrew Garfield was talented with Tick Tick Boom, but didn't necessarily realize that Tick Tick Boom was a really good show.
right.
I
Well,
don't
did
know.
people not realize that before? Because I was like watching all his like small movies, like
I
Hat
I
Club,
get
and
I get so pissed off with the different people that get pushed into the media circuit where I'm like, no, how dare you? This person has been famous and working and excellent for a decade. How dare you try to do this to them where you gaslight and act like they're just now popular?
like even Spider-Man. Come on.
Yeah, Kristen Melody. They're just now doing that with her in for DC for Penguin. Like Penguin did it. Like, oh, she's huge. And you're like, no, how unfair. She was the mother. How dare you?
It's
I
insane.
don't know. It is. It is. So
And they
whatever.
do gaslight us. They're
They
like, wait,
do. They act like they just thought of this. How dare you?
right. Oh my God. And I feel like people are doing that with Ariana right now, which is wild.
Ariana, Wicked, all
Oh
of
my
it.
God.
That
They're like, did you know this musical existed? I'm like, yes.
Wizard of Oz. Like, come on. It is hard. It is hard to see people. I'm sure this is probably what our parents' generation thought of a lot of our radio growing up because so many
Oh,
things were remakes and, we had no idea. So I'm sure that's how they felt of like, oh, you guys are hopping on this gravy train. It's been going, you
right.
know.
I feel like that's how my parents felt when I was like addicted to High School Musical. And they were like, that was Grease for us.
Yeah, they were like, have you seen Grease? Do you know Grease? And
Right.
it's like, and then you see Grease and you're like, yeah, guys, this is rough. Is this how you guys acted towards this?
I was like, but High School Musical.
Yeah, no,
Disney.
High School Musical was amazing for me when that came out. It was such a marriage of things that I loved and was so shocked was actually happening. Because, I grew up in kind of in the Mississippi I grew up in was not ready for the High School Musical craze,
Oh my gosh. Neither
even
was,
though so many of its people were participants. But
I mean, neither was Texas, honestly, I feel like.
I get that.
Like, I feel like it was like the musical, like the bigger hubs were. And
Hmm.
I felt like kind of like when I was a fan, I was like, am I the only fan here?
You're like, it's a secret. You're like, I love this, but I would never,
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
has to know.
I'm like, am I too old to be a fan of this? What's going on?
Sure, sure. I get that. I get that. I
And
think
now,
that's one of the greatest things about aging is realizing that like you're a fan of what you're a fan of and it makes you better. Don't hide from what you love.
yes, yes, exactly. Now I brag about it. I'm like, I didn't go to the high school football games.
No, I'm very open about my love of Power Rangers and Digimon at this point. So, it's
What?
all out there. It's all
High school football games or Disney Channel on a Friday night?
oh God, man.
Like,
Don't look under the bed. Let's go.
oh
I'm
no, that
ready.
one terrified me.
It did. That was why it was great.
That
No.
one was I nope. I saw it once and couldn't sleep.
You're like, yeah, not for me.
Nope. Nope.
You
And
get
that's
that.
when I decided that I could not do horror films.
I
So
get that.
I want to talk about like so you got into the Rockwell scene kind of for 10
Yep.
days too,
Yep.
which
Mhm.
was really cool. How did what was your experience like getting into the unauthorized sort of community
Wild. Wild. I
comedy?
I love wild. I mean, it was. you know, one, it was such a great experience of I think I think any part of this industry, you really have to be careful if you start looking at something you want to do and kind of creating this story that once you do that, it will mean something about you or it will mean a guaranteed next step. Um, or worse, that it will mean you will like what you got. Because while I think that the Rockwell dying was one of the biggest losses to the
Yeah.
engine of LA theater, and I do not think anything has been able to, and not to say I'm not certain what has really tried, but and maybe they have, and I don't mean to dismiss anyone's effort inside of that, but I don't know that anyone has wanted to take on that juggernaut and then seen that through, myself included.
Yeah.
And and I think that for all of its flaws, and there were a plenty,
What?
um, there was a haven of this is a guarantee where you can come and once you get into it, you're in it
Yep.
and it is an animal, but in the same way that I think we all have different relationships with our pets, it is a wild, untamed creature, but you do get love from it and you do get scratched by it. And it was the place to be. You needed
Oh
to
yeah.
be in it, around it, or it needed to be aware of you in some fashion. It needed like you had to be involved in it. And I think that is so often the
Okay.
story of theater, of film, of industry, creatively, your entertainment, that you sometimes get in it and it's not quite what you wanted it to be. And I think we get into a habit of complaining rather than going and making what we want. Uh,
Yep.
and I'm guilty of that, and I'm trying to not be guilty of that anymore. And just continuing to make things for myself so that as I continue to work with other people, I have a better understanding of what it looks like to take on the whole process. Because I think in the same way of like once you manage or serve at a restaurant, it changes the way you act at a restaurant. I think everybody deserves that kind of experience with theater.
Yes. And you got to dive into comedy with that too, which
Yeah, I hadn't. Well, and I have such a specific lens on comedy. I'm best in comedy when you either give me a very specific character to play, or I'm supposed to be the dry, kind of um, sarcastically funny person, or the person that's the straight man to the wild zany. Um, so 10 Things was such a hop in because I think what Rockwell did well and just did was if you were I've come in to replace a lot of people or to sub in for a lot of people in a lot of different projects, and coming into Rockwell, it's just like you're crashing a plane and somehow people are clapping for you.
yes.
Like I mean, really, it's a wild ride, and it proved. I had a lovely conversation on Ashley Argota and Mick Torres's podcast Nismo, that once you do that, you kind of go, I can do whatever you need me to do for theater because it's such an adrenaline overdrive and such a ass backwards fall
Wild.
into singing, dancing, and acting, that you kind of stop. It's sort of a gift that you kind of stop limiting yourself after that, after the quote unquote success of actually varying levels of success with that kind of experience. But it definitely proves to you that you could sort of take on whatever.
Well, and you have people like me who are like pulling out their phones because they're like, film this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and then you get a copy of it and you go, wow, I had no idea what I was doing right there, and it looked okay. That's really cool. You
You're
know,
like, I
I
blacked
blacked out. My theater blacked out, which I've definitely done, and is a really really weird set of experiences where you're kind of like, I'm sort of watching myself do the thing right now.
Wait.
Oh no.
Wait, that's really cool. I've heard improv, like, from multiple Rockwell people too, is like the improv comedy is like the hardest thing to do, but like the best learning experience from theater, which I think is what you kind of touched on.
It's a communications learning, you're figuring out trust of really letting somebody do what they want to do, and then the trust in yourself of trying to bring what you want to bring, and letting
Yes.
that affect everything. It's a lot of listening, and yeah. And then you find, I think the coolest thing about Rockwell is there's so many people in the same way from Tick Tick Boom. There's so many people in my life who would not otherwise be in my life if it weren't for Rockwell, and the different well springs that came from it. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful, as much of a wild animal as it was.
So I want to talk about something recent that you did. So you
Yeah.
created recently, and it was like a limited engagement type thing. But what, so can you talk a little bit about that?
Course. Thank you.
Of
I did not do
course.
it alone, for one. It was definitely a group effort. Kaylin Zarin, who was in the show with me, and then our director, Kara Royster, and Shelley Regner, all were integral in making sure that that production actually happened. We all produced on the project, and um, it was something that kind of came born out of I'd been seeing more theater, and all of us are frustrated with how industry is absent right now in so many different pockets.
It is.
And we had found, through Kara, I had she had put on a monologue showcase, which was really cool. It was a very neat event where about 15 people got up and did monologues, and everybody clapped, and it was a full house, and it was a neat remembering of, oh yeah, I think the last time I saw a bunch of people do this, it was varying degrees of aptitude, whereas everyone here is a professional on some level, and this is good. Like, this is a neat thing to see, and in talking with her and her husband, realized that the theater that we eventually rented was affordable, and that Kara herself was interested in directing. It sparked a bunch of conversations. And a buddy of mine who's a great actor, Sean O'Neill, has done a lot of LA, like, straight theater. He suggested Barbara's Wedding, which is a play by Daniel Stern. It's a two-hander, which is just two people. Play by Daniel Stern, who is uh, Marv, the tall, funny, bushy-haired actor on Home Alone.
Yes.
Yes, and so, like, he wrote this play,
Icon.
and it's called Barbara's Wedding. It's about a couple who lives next door to Barbara Streisand on her wedding day in the 90s in Malibu, and he's supposed to be an actor who doesn't really get work anymore, and used to be on like a TV show as a supporting character, and his wife is trying to get him to just sit down and have dinner and have a nice special day for themselves. We read it, and the play felt a little outdated because of the dynamic between the husband and wife. And so, at Sean's advice, we swapped the genders, and it immediately changed our perspective on the show and helped us see a road where we would want to do a really good job with it and feel like we could pull that off. And we presented that to Kaylin, and I, and Shelly presented that to Kara, and Kara agreed to sign on to it. I think she's more known as a film actress, but she's a great director and a great actress. And we all kind of ended up we ended up adding a show. We ended up doing 3 nights. They were all sold out, which was really cool. We ended up having, like, over the show hold, or the house holds 60 with room for more. And so we ended up doing like 75 seat sold
Yeah.
out nights. And that felt so good to kind of get back into that side of sort of making it happen for yourself. It was a project that didn't cost us any money by the end of it, which felt really good. That's a win, as we know in theater.
Yes.
Um, and we got to it was really interesting because I realized early on that we were filling the audiences with friends and family and acquaintances. And so, like, nothing wrong with that. Love
Yeah.
that. Grateful for that. But it kind of made me realize that, like, oh, this isn't something I think maybe on if I'm honest with myself, it was one of the first times I've done something and not wanted to get something personal out of it. Um, and that was neat for because it's the most personal thing I've done so far. And so it was kind of a great lesson of showing up for the artistry and for the community and hoping that this sparks inspiration for more of us to do our own individual projects and not feel like we're I don't think anybody's feeling like we're splintering the ability of like who gets to do what. It's just more information. It's more streams of how we get to bring theater to Los Angeles. And I think more people want to see theater now than ever, which is exciting.
Like, and I want to see those big touring productions. I love the big touring productions,
Of
but I
course,
also love just like the LA theater.
just weird theater. Just get into telling me a story for an hour and a half and don't charge me too much money because nobody has too much money. And or at least not any of us doing theater. And so, I was really excited because the original idea was just to do the project and to hopefully not have to pay for anything. And then, hurrah, we did it. And as soon as we were in production of doing the show live, everyone was very much in the energy and the idea and the communication of what's next. And so excitedly, we'll announce something in the new year. We're going to do another play with more people in it this time towards the beginning, right before the summer, kind of like end of April, beginning of May, and we're going to do a longer run and have fun. So
Yes. Okay.
yeah,
I need the date. So
I will. I so will. I so will.
ASAP because I'm gonna come support
Please, yeah.
for sure. What and I'm also I have to ask like so with you and Shelly, what's it like
Mhm.
creating behind the scenes? Because you all are both so talented. So you all can
Oh,
like
thank you.
talk about stuff like you all can like talk about creating stuff in your free time and stuff like that together.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
think
that's cool.
we. Oh, go ahead. I'm
Collaboration.
sorry.
I was like, I feel like that's cool, the collaboration that can happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we get caught in pockets of doing it really well for a minute and then either getting personally busy or um, forgetting that it can be that easy and we don't do it as much as we like to do it or as much as we have ideas to do it. But when we do it, it is exciting to see that we bring very different things to the table, but it does make the table more round. I'm a big round table guy, and it is exciting to see in my dozen years in LA the amount of really talented, really lovely, really driven people that you can get to show up at your table. Um, and I feel very fortunate and grateful for that.
Yes, that's what makes the LA theater community like when people are like, "Why LA? Like, would you ever live in New York?" I'm like, "I like visiting."
Yeah, I think, for me, one, I do want to do film as well, and so I don't think I'll ever feel uh like I want to completely disconnect from Los Angeles. I think I'll always want to have a foot here. I think that in my limited experiences of living or working in New York, it is a hustle in a
Yes.
way that you do not necessarily have to hustle here, which I do think makes some of our trajectories slower, myself included, because there is not as much of a need.
Yes.
But I see some of the wear on people who live in New York as well, and it's a lot of energy and it's a lot of noise, and it's difficult to get quiet and alone. I need that. Um, so I'm more of a fan of like I only want to live in New York for work, and I
Right.
think I was fortunate enough to have seen enough people doing either New York or Los Angeles between high school and people graduating and leaving and going and do that, and college and people graduating, leaving and going and doing that, that I saw for myself I needed to go to LA. And I also didn't feel like I was a competent enough dancer, which I'm sad about because I can dance. And so I think that was a self-limiting belief as a younger person for lack of experience. So
Oh my gosh, and there I had someone on, like, 2 episodes ago who was like, "I'd never thought I would do dance roles," and has done a bunch of dance roles, so, hey, manifesting. I wanted to see that.
yeah.
Like, "Hey, you and Shelly tap dancing." No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God, she'd have to teach me. I that was Becca, that was such a funny thing because literally she was like, I have a tap dancing audition. And I was like, you what? And she all of a sudden just starts tapping. And I was like, we've been together years. I have no idea that she can do this.
Oh,
None.
my jaw dropped.
Oh, I mean, and she is such a good tapper.
I was like, "W excuse me?"
And she was like, yeah, I haven't tapped in years. I was like, okay, okay.
Then
And
you
sometimes those little moments for her are I'm like, okay.
like, "Are you serious?" Wait, but I think that's a good idea. She can teach
Uh,
you.
maybe so. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like that's an area where we all struggle a little bit is wherever somebody else has an acumen or a proclivity to be good at something and that you don't necessarily. I think it's, at least for my personality, it's difficult to be either teacher or student in that scenario where it's like with someone you know well. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's my experience. Maybe that's my limit, um, but yeah. So I would be excited to have her try to teach me how to dance. I'm flat-footed, and I'm like, is that a problem with tapping? I don't know.
Don't no, you can't limit yourself.
That's right. Thank you, Becca.
You can't limit yourself. You can do whatever you set your mind to, so
All right.
some inspiration. So,
Thank you.
I wanna, like, manifest, do you have any dream roles that you'd wanna play on stage one day?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you. Um, I recently saw a cool production of and again, I'm sorry, names slip a little bit for me.
Oh, it's
Um, the the Bonnie and Clyde musical.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't mind taking a stab at Clyde. I would not mind
Ooh,
doing a little Clyde trial. I also would be interested as I get a little older, trying to get into the certain parts of Les Mis. Or I would be interested in doing Marius if someone was doing a little bit like older casting across the board. If you're not looking for somebody that looks 20, Um,
yes,
but
like, this is such a good one.
I like that. I also
I was gonna say, let's add, like, Phantom to the list.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was an audition piece of mine for a long time. I'd take that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they're
um,
bringing it back in some capacity in the US.
I don't know about that.
That's what I heard.
Um, yeah, I'd be interested in a lot of those things. I'd be interested in I really want to do the play Rumors at some point. That's a stage play I want to do. It's a comedy, like a
Ooh,
thriller mystery comedy. I want to tell you it is Neil
no,
Simon, but
wait, it's who?
I think it's Neil Simon.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it came up on Google.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a lot of fun. And I also think there's a show called Greater Tuna that's like I believe it's typically two people.
Heard of
Um,
one.
and it's a comedy and it's real silly because you're playing a lot of other characters. It's like two radio hosts in Texas who are kind of progressive and they're interviewing a lot of people and so they play those people that they interview. and then sometimes walk out of those
That's
scenes and
wild.
follow those people home into their lives. And it is wild, but it's a lot of fun, and it's quick. It's not too long, but it's funny and poignant, and sadly today no less progressive.
Right.
And um, I also, I think there's a show called Rehearsal for Murder I'd be interested in doing again. It's more of a thriller drama. Um, I'd like Last 5 years. I feel like I'm a couple of years away from like
I was
aging out of that, um,
I
but I
was
would
gonna
enjoy
say that
doing it.
sounds like a great idea. That sounded like a great idea.
Oh well, thank you. I'd really love to do it. It'd have to be very specific because most of the time when I see it, I feel like we all make the mistakes of picking who we root for too hard, and that always falls into the production in some manner.
Yeah.
Um, if I felt like if I felt like I was landing in a production or with a production team that understood how to make you walk out of the piece feeling so hurt and so conflicted, and so like a little piece of you feeling really confident that like everybody deserves to get what they want.
Yeah.
um I don't know, like that would make me really, really excited. And even though I've never seen a bad production of it, I feel like every production I've ever seen always has a slant. And I would love to see one that makes you really go, ooh, relationships are complicated.
Right.
Like, because I think that's even from um, Jason Robert Brown, Jason
Yeah,
Robert
yeah, yeah.
Brown, even
Yes.
from Jason Robert Brown's lips, that like the most well done performances in his opinion are the ones that are the most difficult to watch. And I think that the most difficult to watch, not because they point him out as the bad guy, but because they showcase the real difficulty of, it's really difficult to be two different people having your own independent goals and lives and trying to match those things up and make them continue to work over time. It's difficult.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
think so. I would love to be in a production that did that. I One of my favorite songs in the world is "If I Didn't Believe in You,"
Oh, yes.
um, and I, not to toot my own horn, but I
Lyrics.
think I give a pretty good rendition of it that feels like the anger of the song or the hurt of this or the anger of the song is rooted in hurt, not rooted in selfishness.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a major component of the piece, is that like nobody has to be the bad guy here, even though bad things occur.
Yeah.
Like, and that's such an understanding of age. Like I never could have given you that performance or that even intellectual idea at 25 or something, when I was more age appropriate for the role. Um,
You learn over time about like the emotions you have to put into roles like that because it is such a complicated story, I feel like, to tell.
it is, and I think that's why it's done and done again, and why so many people use it as audition songs and different things like that, because it's such a vulnerable piece inside of being like very funny and very good musically. And
It it's so good. And it's like, "Oh, wait, what's going on? What am I watching at this particular time too?" Like, I mean, and the movie versus stage productions is so interesting to watch too.
yeah, and I think the reality is I probably struggle because I'm sitting here as we're talking about it and hearing what you're saying about it and going like, oh man. And my brain's starting to fill with like ideas of like how you'd want to construct the piece. And so I think something I fall into sometimes that makes life confusing for me is I'm not sure if I want to like direct it and produce it or if I want to be in it. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't want to do well, but like with a musical or with something where like the piece that we just did, Barbara's Wedding, I never would have been a hair as good as I feel like I pulled off the truth of the piece without my director. Like that just wouldn't have been possible for me inside of trying to direct myself. Um, please.
Well, you could be in one and then direct one.
Well, thank you, Becca. That's a great idea. I suppose I could do that. I suppose I really could do that. So maybe that's what I'll shoot for, and I'll take your manifestation there.
Hey, hey, we need more productions of that in LA. Like, I'm jealous of New York. They're getting one in March.
Yeah, I do think LA needs to figure out how to adopt more of um the frequency with which New York produces theater, as well as the connectivity. We do not have the connectivity.
Well, the OC does a great job, I feel like, but I don't know if
Really?
they I don't know if they do like the smaller productions like last 5 years. I think they do like big, more glamorous spectacle productions
Hmm.
than like two-person productions because they want as many people on stage as possible.
That makes sense. That makes sense because that means more butts and seats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to ask before I get to my last question, which is like a little like fun question that I thought of
Hmm.
on the fly minutes before the interview as I was on Spotify, is
Hmm.
where can people follow you on social media to keep up with what you're doing in the theater industry and to find out when they can come see the show next year?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. So I feel like I primarily keep people posted most on Instagram and specifically through Reels, through my story of just putting out little blurbs, little pieces. I also feel like I kind of blow up my Instagram with whatever project I'm working on while I'm working on it. I try to let other things get in there, but yeah, that's definitely the best way to follow me to keep up with what I'm working on.
Awesome. And I'll post the links in the description in the lower third.
Please. Oh,
And
thank you.
my last question is that's kind of like a fun question I thought of this
Mhm.
morning. Is so what I was doing Spotify Wrapped this morning, and what is on your Spotify Wrapped or Apple
Um,
if you listen
okay,
to Apple?
yes, Apple. It's Apple. Let me see. Let's do it. What do I do there? How does that work?
I don't know how it works
Okay.
on Apple, but like
Okay.
what's your top what would or you can predict. I think no, it says like replay and share when you open Apple.
Let's see. Oh, I know. I have my top 25 most played, and I'll just go from there because that's real. Um,
Yes.
so in my top 25 most played, I feel like the pertinent pieces are I have a piece by a friend of mine named Riley Costello, and it's called Champion. Um,
Hey.
and it's honestly a phenomenal song and a fun bop. I have 5 Years by Bo Burnham,
Okay.
and because Bo Burnham musically breaks my brain sometimes because he's so funny and yet the song is so catchy that I'm like, this is unfair. You're a sexier Weird Al. Um, and then I've got John Bellion's Hand of God outro, which I just love John Bellion.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yes.
big fat fan. Um, and then my Give Me Everything Archer March that's from definitely from this most recent season of Bridgerton.
Okay, so my like top artist is kind of like a John Bellion type
Yeah.
crossover. My top is Tori Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay, I see that.
yeah, she did like uh uh I think John Bellion produced her album. So
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
yeah. So definitely a little
We're in sync. Oh,
fact.
and in fact, Becca, before I hop off thank you for asking me the socials question. So, I think before the year's over, we did do a couple of nights shooting the play. So we are going to do a limited release of a pro shot of the not a pro shot, but like our attempt at a pro shot of the piece. And so I'll let you know when that happens
Cool.
so that you can watch it.
Yeah, and if yeah, and I can post links and stuff. So like
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll help you all promote that because
Yeah,
that
thank you.
sounds awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's Star Kid, I think does so much right in terms of figuring out how we bring theater to a large group of people continually and make enough money doing it to get to do it. Um,
Yes.
and I think one of the things they do really, really well is their online presence presenting all their materials I am I would be years away from what they're able to achieve, but definitely using something like that as a roadmap for how to try to bring in not only a little bit more monetary income, but just more availability. And so many of us have people, I'm sure you have people in Texas. I have people all over that like they're never going to get to see it if
Yeah.
we don't get to send them a copy of it. So I'll let you know about that.
And it's with like everything. It's kind of sad to think about.
Yeah. Well, and
More
friends of
accessible.
mine that are in the theater world, more so like I can tell that there's an upswing in more people wanting to see the pro shot of theater, of musicals.
Absolutely.
And I'm on board with that too. I think Star Kid has a lot to do with that, but and I love what they did, but or do, but I hope that we will get to do more of that and get to move in those directions and include more theater friends that and everything.
Yes. Oh my God, I hope so. Like that's something I'm gonna manifest right now.
Great, thank you.
More more accessibility for everything.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's been so awesome to talk with you on this.
yeah,
And
thank you, Becca.
thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.